Over the last couple of years, Mazda cars have really become very popular. And a car that has gained a popularity in that short duration is the Mazda Atenza. You look at the Mazda Axela, Mazda Demio, and the Mazda CX-5, they have really turned their segments upside down in terms of numbers. And sometimes you can say that they are now the cars in front. Welcome to 0 to 60 Motoring once again. My name is Bill Tuori, and this is a 2018 Mazda Atenza 2.2 liter turbo diesel. Of course, I've reviewed Mazda Atenzas before, but all of them have been petrol flavors, and hardly a day passes without someone asking me about the Mazda Atenza in diesel form. Now, 0 to 60 Motoring makes your car ownership journey easy. If you want to purchase a car, you can shoot us a message on the number below. We can scout or source a clean car for you. And if you want car reviews, remember to check our social media platforms. That is a Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get our unbiased and detailed car reviews. All right, here we go. 2018 Mazda Atenza 2.2 liter turbo diesel review. So when you look at the Mazda Atenza, this generation started back in 2013, but it was given some refreshment in late 2016. But then in 2019, it was also refreshed. So whatever you are seeing in this video forms the last batches of cars that you're going to find in showrooms. Because if you go into a showroom and maybe you want a 2018 or 2019 Mazda Atenza, there is a huge possibility that you are going to get the new facelifted version of the Mazda Atenza. Already this year we've scouted 4 of those units, but all of them have been petrol units, so they could not even make the cut for a diesel review. That's why I chose to review this one. But when I land my hands on the diesel Atenza from that facelift variation, of course I'm going to bring it on the channel. So these are mid-size sedan that should be competing with cars like maybe the Toyota Camry, the likes of the Honda Accord. But now when you are looking at the Kenyan market, we normally compare cars based on the price tag. And if you look at the price tag of the 2018 Mazda Atenza, it will be in the region of 2.4 million shillings, whereby a buyer in that segment can also look at something like the Toyota Mark X, that's the GRX 130 series. They can also look at the Nissan Skyline Touareg GTT. They can also look at the Subaru Legacy. Those are the most common rivals when I'm looking at the Kenyan market. But if you want the traditional rivals to the Mazda Atenza or the Mazda 6, it will be the Camry or the Accord if you base your argument on the drivetrain, which is a front-wheel drivetrain. But if you're looking at the budget, the rivals will be the Mark X, Legacy, the likes of the Skyline. And you can also bring in the Nissan Tiana into the mix, which is the cheapest, or let me say the most affordable car in that class. The Mazda Atenza can be served in 2 flavors. What I'm driving here is the saloon or the sedan version, and there is also a wagon body. If I was to purchase a Mazda Atenza, of course, I'm a big fan of wagons. I'll definitely buy a 2.2 liter AWD Mazda Atenza wagon. From our car scouting, I can tell that a majority of buyers are really like the sedan version for the Mazda Atenza, and they don't like the wagon one. And for something like the Mazda Axela, majority actually prefer the hatchback variation over the sedan version. Now, when you're looking at the Mazda Atenza or Mazda cars generally, the design element has been one of their biggest selling points. Because when you look at this face here with this Kodo Solo Motion design language, it is a really beautiful offering, especially when it's flanked by these daytime running lights. Now, in the facelift version from 2019 is going to actually look better. I find it better looking than this one, but still these are very beautiful offering if you ask me. So definitely people are going to purchase this car. The looks element has a role to play in their choices. On the rear side, the Mazda Atenza is still a beautiful offering. You have the Atenza badge here, AWD, to tell you that power is sent to all the 4 wheels. Sky Active D, of course, to tell you that these are diesel variation. The beautiful tail lights here do exhaust, of course, which makes the car sporty. So generally, when you're looking at the aesthetics of this car, it is actually a very big selling point. So under the bonnet, you have a 2.2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine that makes 175 horsepower and 420 Newton meters of torque. Now, the Mazda Atenza can also be found with the petrol engines, which are also four-cylinder. That is a 2000cc and a 25 RSCC, and they are naturally aspirated, meaning they don't have a turbo. In most Mazda Atenzas, power goes to the front wheels, but in this specific car, power goes to all the four corners or all the four wheels, because this is an all-wheel drive car via 6-speed automatic gearbox. If you know how to drive a car with both legs, Mazda Atenza is one of the few cars in this class that can also be found with a 6-speed manual transmission. So if you want a manual transmission car and you want a mid-size sedan or wagon, there is a huge possibility that you may be looking at a Mazda Atenza. How does the Mazda Atenza turbo diesel drive? Now, I really like the comfort of these seats and how this car feels settled on the road. The steering wheel is actually dead accurate, and I don't have a problems placing this car on its lane, even if the road is as curvy as the one I'm using to make this review. So I'm actually satisfied with that. The 420 Newton meters of torque is available from a very low RPMs, meaning you really don't need to strain this engine for it to move. And that should be good news when it comes to fuel consumption, but I'll be there in a few moments. Another thing is, because this is a low sitting car and power goes to all the four corners, then it means that I have maximum grip or traction at all times. That is the main advantage of having an all-wheel drive car. So it basically means that is why actually this car feels agile and nimble around corners, or when you are doing crazy speeds, the car doesn't really feel like it's struggling to get traction, or let me say stability. It sits low to the ground, and because power is sent to all the four wheels, you are going actually to like how this car handles. The low ground clearance of this car is a good thing and a bad thing in equal measure. But let me start with the positivities. On the positive side, it is a good car to drive on the highway around corners. It feels settled and agile. But now, when you're looking at this car, it is a car that needs good roads. If you live in areas where the roads are untidy, a Mazda Atenza with this stock suspension is not the best car for you. Because even if you have an all-wheel drive like what I have in this car, it's easy destroying the underneath of this car or the bumpers here and there, because it is a low-sitting car. But generally, that is how mid-size sedans are actually built. So this car can easily get to top speeds, or let me say decent speeds, with ease. And if a car can get to 80, 100, 120 kilometers per hour with ease, I think that is a good car for the average person. Now, sometimes when you mention that this car has 175 HP and something like 420 Newton meter of torque, some people may think that it is so powerful that you can take it on track. What I've really learned with a Atenza or a Mazda diesel generally from Excel experience, which I also brought on this channel, from living with a 2.2 turbo diesel, is that at top speeds, they really get out of breath easily. So they are good for something like 0 to something like 140 thereabouts. But above that, they really get out of breath easily. In terms of highway driving, when you gun the car and maybe you want it, maybe performance, it really doesn't struggle that much, because I'm now doing these 80 kilometers per hour. The place is flat and my RPM is barely at 1500, and that is going to contribute to very good numbers in terms of fuel efficiency. But I'll be coming into fuel efficiency in a few moments. Now, there is a thing I really don't like about Mazda Atenzas, generally from the couple of Mazda Atenzas I've driven. Now, when you're at high speeds with the Mazda Atenza, the braking capability of this car is not as sharp as I could have loved. So if you've driven this car back to back with a Skyliner, maybe a Legacy, you know what I mean. But I don't think that the average person is going to have an issue with the braking capability of this car. Now let's talk something regarding the reliability of this Mazda Atenza diesel. Now when you're looking at this 2.2 turbo diesel here, this is the same engine you're going to find in some variation of the CX-5, the Mazda Axela and the CX-5. Now, I've lived with the Mazda CX-5 2.2 AWD for almost 3 years and the car has been trouble-free, no issues whatsoever. So when majority of the people normally ask me whether they should buy a Mazda Atenza or a CX-5, my suggestion is normal the petrol until they mention performance and fuel efficiency. Now, when you look at this 2.2-liter turbo diesel, it has two main weaknesses, mostly in terms of the cooling system and the DPF, that is the diesel particulate filter. Now, majority of these cars from this generation come with a plastic cooler bypass. You have to swipe it to a metallic one if you want your cooling system to be strong. That is something we've done on this car, so the cooling system of this car is okay. Another thing, when you're looking at the DPF, it normally clogs if you are a short distance person. That is if you don't give your car enough time for it to heat up and do regeneration on its own. That is why sometimes if you don't do enough distance for the car to do regeneration on its own, it is recommended that you do a DPF delete. That is what we did on the CX-5, and 3 years later, no issues whatsoever. So if you're purchasing this car, you have to make sure that you look at those two things with seriousness. If you don't maintain, or if you don't have your DPF looked at, you are going to have issues with it, especially in terms of power. So another solution, if you can't do a DPF delete, or you don't do highway speeds, or if you don't want to modify the cooling system and you want to keep your car stock, another solution is buying a 2.5-liter petrol, which actually also gives you good power, but you'll frequent the gas station. So that is the solution if you don't want to buy a 2.2 turbo diesel, but you still want power. But for this 2.2-liter turbo diesel, if you strengthen the cooling system and you make sure that you don't have a DPF problems, it is a car I'm going to really recommend. Now, the interior of this 2018 Mazda Atenza 2.2 turbo diesel is also a good place to spend time in. You have paddle shifters, volume control buttons on the left side, cruise control here. These are base model, of course. It doesn't come with many features. You have traction control, iStop here, fabric seats here, and an infotainment screen here, which you can actually control from the rotor knob down here. Of course, the owner of this car has actually modified it. This actually supports Apple CarPlay. So generally, when you're looking at this car in terms of the features inside, it's actually a very good car, especially for a base model. If you step up to the higher trim levels, on top of what you are seeing here, you can actually find it with the sunroof, memory seats, a Bose sound system. Those are the features that you find in the top variation. But even for the base model, it still brings many things to the table. So is the Mazda Atenza value for money, or should you buy one? Now, if you have a 2.3, 2.4 million shillings and fuel efficiency and good power are on top of your priority list, then definitely it's hard to find a car that is going to beat the Mazda Atenza, especially on that fuel efficiency part. So that is a short review of this 2018 Mazda Atenza 2.2 turbo diesel. If you have a question regarding this car or the rivals, you can shoot it on the comment section or ring us. We're going to attend to it with immediate effect. If you have a car that you'd like us to review, you can also get in touch with us. And most importantly, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, guys, that is enough for today. Bye for now.